A child wandered into the throne room of an Alpha King during a gathering of pack leaders, somewhere she had no right to be. But when she reached out and touched the glowing silver mark on his wrist, the ancient Luna's bond that no common wolf should recognize, she looked up at the Alpha King and said something that froze every breath in the chamber. "Sir, my mom has a mark just like yours." The guards stopped moving. The Alphas stopped whispering. And Draven Nightshade, the last of his bloodline, or so he believed, stared at the Omega Maid's daughter as though she'd just spoken his name in a language the moon had forgotten. What happened next would shatter a pack built on secrets. The full moon hung silver and bright above Nightshade. Keep the night, everything changed. Isla Crane was 8 years old, and she had lived her entire life in the shadowed halls of the Alpha Court, a place where Omega children like her were meant to be invisible. She was the daughter of Selene Crane, a palace maid who worked late into the night, polishing silver, arranging flowers, and keeping her head down in a world that didn't notice Omegas, unless they made mistakes. Isla didn't mind being invisible most of the time. It meant she could explore. Tonight was different. The Moon Chamber, the heart of the keep, the seat of the Silver Moon dynasty, was alive with light and noise. A royal gathering was underway. Isla had been told to stay in the servants' quarters, but curiosity pulled at her like a thread. She slipped through a side passage, her small feet silent on the cold stone. The closer she got to the throne room, the louder the sounds became. Low growls, the clink of crystal, the rustle of fine cloth. And then she was there. The moon chamber was enormous. The ceiling vaulted so high, it disappeared into shadow, held up by columns of white marble veined with silver. Chandeliers hung like frozen stars. The walls were lined with tapestries depicting ancient alphas and lunas, their eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. And at the far end of the room, seated on a throne of stone and silver, was Draven Nightshade. Isla had seen the Alpha King before, always from a distance, but never like this. He sat draped in black leather edged in silver, a crown of thorns resting on his dark hair. His face was sharp and cold, carved from years of rule and loss. But it was his wrist that drew Isla's gaze. Resting on the arm of the throne, exposed beneath his rolled sleeve, was a mark. A silver seal shaped like a crescent moon wrapped around a wolf's paw print. The Luna's bond. Isla had seen that mark before. She didn't think. She just moved. She slipped through the doors, past the guards, weaving between clusters of alphas and betas in fine cloth. No one stopped her. No one even looked at her. Until she reached the throne. Draven was mid-conversation with a pack leader when Isla appeared at his side. She reached out, small fingers extending toward the glowing mark on his wrist, and touched it. The Luna's bond flared. Silver light exploded across the chamber. The chandeliers flickered. The tapestries trembled. Every voice in the room cut off at once. Draven's head snapped down. His amber eyes locked onto the child standing before him, her tiny hand still resting against his. And Isla, unafraid, looked up at the immortal Alpha and said the words that would change everything. "Sir, my mom has a mark just like yours." The silence that followed was suffocating. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A goblet fell and shattered. Guards shifted, hands moving instinctively toward their weapons. Because the Luna's bond was not something that could be shared. It appeared only on those of the ruling bloodline, the direct descendants of the first Alpha and Luna, and the ruling bloodline had been extinct for decades, or so everyone believed. Draven rose from his throne slowly, his gaze never leaving Isla. His voice, when he finally spoke, was low and dangerous. "Child, what did you say?" Isla blinked up at him, confused by the reaction. She pointed at his wrist, then gestured vaguely toward the servants' wing. "My mom. She has a mark just like that one on her arm. It glows sometimes when she has bad dreams." The chamber erupted. Draven heard none of it. He stared at Isla as though she were a ghost, as though she had just resurrected something he'd buried decades ago. And in that moment, deep within the walls of Nightshade Keep, something ancient stirred. The Luna's bond on Draven's wrist pulsed brighter. Cracks of silver light began to spread across the marble floor beneath the throne, splintering outward like veins. The keep itself was waking, and Isla Crane, the Omega Maid's daughter, the child no one noticed, stood at the center of it all, her small hand still glowing faintly where she touched the king's mark. Draven's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Bring me Selene Crane. Now." Before anyone could move, Draven descended from his throne and dropped to one knee before Isla. His hand closed around her small wrist, not roughly, but with urgency. "Don't be afraid," he said, his voice softer than anyone in the chamber had ever heard it. "I need to see." He turned her palm upward, and the entire court leaned forward as one. There, flickering beneath Isla's skin like moonlight beneath water, was the faint outline of the Luna's bond. It pulsed in rhythm with Draven's own mark, the two symbols calling to each other. A pack leader gasped, another whispered a prayer. Draven's jaw tightened. "Impossible. Bring me Selene Crane," he repeated. "Now." Two guards broke from formation and disappeared through a side door. In the servants' quarters 3 floors below, Selene was folding linens when the door slammed open. She jumped, nearly dropping the sheet in her hands. 2 guards stood in the doorway. "Selene Crane, you're summoned to the moon chamber. Immediately." Her heart dropped. "What? Why? Is it Isla? Is she hurt?" "The king has summoned you," the guard repeated. "Come with us." The walk to the throne room felt endless. Selana's pulse hammered in her ears. She'd worked in this keep for 8 years, and had never once been summoned to the moon chamber. When the great doors opened, the sight that greeted her stole the breath from her lungs. The entire court had fallen silent. Pack leaders stood frozen. Guards lined the walls, tense and alert. And at the center of it all, kneeling on the marble floor before the throne, was Isla. Standing over her, hand still holding her daughter's wrist, was Alpha King Draven. "Isla!" Selene started forward, but the guards caught her arms. "Mom!" Isla's face lit up with relief. Selene's gaze snapped to the king. "Let go of my daughter. Please. Whatever she did. I'm sorry. Look at me." Draven's voice cut through her panic. He rose slowly, his eyes locking onto Selene's, and something shifted. His expression cold, and composed just a moment before, fractured. He stared at her as if he were seeing a ghost. "Your Majesty," Selene whispered, confused and terrified. Draven took a step toward her, his wrist still glowing faintly with the Luna's bond. He lifted it slowly, almost hesitantly. "I know you." Selena shook her head. "No, my lord, I'm just a maid. I've served here for 8 years, but we've never—" "No." His voice was firmer now, edged with something desperate. "I know you." He extended his glowing wrist toward her, and Selene's world exploded. Pain ripped through her left arm like fire. She gasped and staggered backward, clutching her sleeve. Beneath the fabric, something burned. The guards released her in shock as she collapsed to her knees, crying out. "Mom!" Isla screamed. Selene tore at her sleeve with shaking hands. The fabric fell away, and there, blazing silver across her forearm, was the Luna's bond. The court erupted into chaos. "She bears the mark. An Omega? How? Is this possible? The bloodline! It can't be!" But Selene didn't hear them. She was drowning in pain, in light, in something deeper than memory trying to claw its way to the surface. The seal on her arm pulsed in perfect sync with Draven's. The 2 marks resonated like struck bells, their energy rippling outward in waves. The marble floor beneath them cracked. Silver light spilled through the fractures, spreading like veins across the chamber. Selene's vision blurred. Images flashed behind her eyes. Fragmented, Violent, wrong. Hands grabbing her, dragging her backward. Flames consuming a stone fortress. A man's voice, cold and commanding. Erase her. She cannot remember. Draven's face, younger, desperate, screaming her name. No! Selena gasped, clutching her head. No, that's not. I don't... Celine. Draven's voice broke through the storm. He was kneeling beside her now, one hand still holding Isla, the other hovering near Selena's shoulder. What did they do to you? Celine looked up at him, tears streaming down her face. I don't understand. What's happening to me? The silver cracks in the floor widened. The chamber groaned like a beast waking from centuries of sleep. Draven rose to his feet, pulling Isla up with him. Seal the chamber, he commanded. The guards moved instantly. Iron rods slid from hidden slots in the walls, slamming across the doors. Enchanted chains wrapped around the entryways, locking them tight. Draven turned back to Celine, his expression hard. Someone erased your memory. Someone hid you, and someone tried to make sure I never found you again. Selene stared at him, her arm still blazing. Who am I? Draven's jaw tightened. He looked at Isla, still glowing faintly, then back at Celine. You're the woman they told me was dead. The words hung in the air like smoke after fire. Selene stared at Draven, her mind reeling. Dead? I've never... She shook her head violently. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm a maid. I've worked here since Isla was born. Before that, She stopped. Before that, what? Her thoughts hit a wall, solid, impenetrable, wrong. There was nothing before Nightshade Keep. No memories of childhood, no recollection of parents or a home. Just fog. I don't remember, she whispered. Draven's expression darkened. Your name, before you came here, what was it? Celine Crane. Before Crane, Celine opened her mouth, closed it. Her heart began to race. I don't know. Your parents, where are they? The pack you were born in? Anything? I don't know. Celine's voice cracked. She pressed her hands to her temples, trying to force the memories to surface, but there was nothing. Draven stepped back, his jaw tight. He looked at her not with anger, but with horror. It's not possible, he breathed. He turned toward the throne. The silver moonline was extinguished 30 years ago. Every last member was slaughtered in the rogue. Wars! I saw the bodies. I buried them myself. A murmur rippled through the pack leaders. Celine struggled to her feet, still cradling her glowing arm. I don't understand any of this. I'm not royalty. I'm just... You bear the bond. Draven's voice was hard now. The Luna's bond does not appear on servants. It does not appear on Omegas with no connection to the throne. It appears only on those descended from the first Luna. He turned back to her, his gaze piercing. Which means either you're lying or someone made you forget. Isla had been silent through all of this, but now she tugged at Draven's grip. What's wrong with my mom? Draven's expression softened slightly. He called out, Elder Mara. An older woman in silver robes stepped forward. Your Majesty. Take the child to the eastern quarters. Keep her safe. Let no one near her. No, Isla jerked backward. I'm not leaving my mom. Isla. Celine started forward, but Draven raised a hand. She'll be safe. But I need answers, and I can't get them with her here. Elder Mara moved toward Isla. Come, little one. No, Isla screamed, thrashing. Mom, don't let them take me. Celine's heart shattered. Isla, it's okay. I promise I'm not going anywhere. But Isla kept screaming, kept fighting even as Elder Mara gently carried her toward a side door. Selene collapsed to her knees, sobbing. Draven stood motionless for a long moment. Then he turned and gestured sharply toward a cluster of robed figures near the throne. High Council, with me, now. The council convened at the base of the throne. 5 werewolves, ancient and powerful. They spoke in low, urgent voices. The bond cannot lie, said Counselor Thorne, a gaunt man with silver hair. If it appears on her flesh, she carries the blood. But the silver moon line is extinct, said Counselor Astrid, a woman with sharp features. We witnessed their execution ourselves. Clearly not everyone, Draven interrupted coldly. Thorne shook his head. If she survived the rogue wars, why would she serve as a maid? Why not claim her birthright? Because she doesn't remember it, said a third voice, Counselor Orin, older than the rest. Memory erasure. It's the only explanation. The chamber fell silent. Blood magic, Orin continued quietly. Forbidden for centuries, but still possible. If someone wanted to hide her, to bury her identity so deeply even she couldn't find it, they would strip her memories and plant new ones in their place. Draven's hands clenched. Who would have the power to do that? Orin met his gaze evenly. Someone close to the throne. Someone who knew the old magic. Someone who wanted the silver moon line erased permanently. A cold silence settled. Draven's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. Kyle. High above the moon chamber, hidden in the shadows of a forgotten balcony, two figures crouched in silence. They wore black cloaks, their faces obscured by enchanted masks. They had been stationed here for weeks, watching, waiting, reporting. And now they had something to report. The first spy pressed a finger to the rune etched into their collar. A faint pulse of magic rippled outward. The child has awakened the bond. The woman's memories are returning. Draven knows. The message was sent. And in a fortress far beyond the Crimson Ridge Mountains, in a throne room carved from black stone, Prince Kael received it. His lips curled into a cold smile. So, he murmured, the little Omegas brought his founder. He rose from his throne, shadows stretching long across the floor. Then, it's time to silence it. Back in the moon chamber, Draven turned to face Selene. I don't know who you were, but I'm going to find out. And when I do, I will find the one who stole your life from you. Selene looked up at him, tears still streaming down her face, the Luna's bond burning bright on her arm. And then? Draven's eyes blazed amber. Then I will make them pay. The fortress of Shadow Peak stood where no mortal dared to travel. Deep beyond the Crimson Ridge Mountains, eternal darkness clung to the black stone walls. Inside the great hall, torches burned with pale blue flame. The throne at the center was carved from obsidian, its surface etched with runes that pulsed with stolen magic. And seated upon it was Prince Kael Nightshade. He was younger than Draven, or at least appeared so. Where Draven's face was carved with decades of rule and restraint, Kael's was sharp and cruel. His hair was darker, black as the void, and his eyes burned with amber so deep it looked almost red. He had been in exile for 30 years, and he had spent every single one of those years waiting. The side door creaked open. Two figures in black cloaks entered and knelt before the throne. Speak, Kael said, his voice like frost. My lord, the maid's daughter, Isla Crane, appeared in the moon chamber tonight. She touched the king's Luna's bond. Kael's fingers tightened on the armrest. And? The mark awakened on her skin. The entire chamber reacted. The king summoned the woman, Selene Crane. When he raised his wrist toward her, the bond burned awake on her arm as well. Silence. Then slowly, Kael leaned forward. Her memories? Beginning to surface. She collapsed. The king has sealed the chamber. He knows something is wrong. Kael sat motionless. Then he moved. He rose from the throne in a blur of shadow and fury, his fist slamming into the stone pillar beside him. The entire column shattered. She was supposed to be dead, he roared. The spies flinched. Kael paced like a caged beast. I gave the order 30 years ago. Selene was to be erased. Mind wiped, memories destroyed, left to rot in obscurity. She was never supposed to remember. And the child. The child should never have been born. He whirled toward the spies. How far has the awakening progressed? The bond on the child is incomplete, my lord. Faint, unstable, but it responded to the king's mark. Cale's jaw tightened. The prophecy. My lord, the prophecy I spent decades burying. His voice dropped to a venomous whisper. A child born of dormant royal blood and Omega humility shall awaken the Silver Moon throne and break the Shadow's claim. He laughed, cold and bitter. They think I'm the Shadow. They think the child is their savior. He turned back to his throne. How long until the Blood Moon Ascension? 3 nights, my lord. Cale's lips curled into a cruel smile. Perfect. He moved toward a long table covered with maps, diagrams of Nightshade Keep, patrol routes, weak points. Draven thinks he has time, Kyle said. He thinks he can unravel the mystery, restore the woman's memories, protect the child. He slammed his hand down on the map. He's wrong. The spies stood, awaiting orders. Gather the Shadow Legion, Cale commanded. Call in every rogue wolf who owes me a blood debt. I want every cursed blade, every enchanted chain ready. My lord, an assault on Nightshade Keep is exactly what we're going to do. During the Blood Moon Ascension, when the Keep's defenses are focused inward, when Draven is at his most vulnerable, we will strike. He turned to face them fully. Kill Draven, burn the court, and bring me the child. One spy hesitated. My lord, if the child's bond is awakening, she may be. She's a mistake, Cale snarled. A loose thread I should have severed years ago. I will not let her become the weapon Draven uses to reclaim what I am owed. He moved to a pedestal where a blackened gauntlet rested, etched with dark runes. He lifted it, sliding it onto his hand. I will take the throne, he said quietly. Not through birthright, but through conquest. The prophecy doesn't matter. The child doesn't matter. All that matters is power. He clenched his fist, and shadows coiled around it. And I will have it. The spies bowed. It will be done, my lord. And send word to our allies within the keep. Tell them to watch the child. If her bond begins to awaken fully before the ascension. He paused, his smile cold. Kill her. They placed Celine in a chamber on the eastern wing. The bed was draped in silver silk. A fire crackled in the hearth. 2 guards stood outside the door, not to keep intruders out, but to keep her in. Celine lay on the bed, clutching her left arm where the Luna's bond still burned faintly. The pain had dulled, but something worse had taken its place. Memories. They came in fragments, jagged and violent. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw things that couldn't be hers. A child's laughter echoing through marble halls. A boy with pale hair and amber eyes reaching for her hand. The scent of night-blooming jasmine. A voice, her voice, saying a name she couldn't quite hear. And then the darker visions. Flames consuming stone walls. Hands dragging her backward. A man's face, cold, cruel, familiar, leaning close and whispering, "Erase her. She cannot remember." Selena gasped and sat upright, her heart hammering. "Stop," she whispered. "Please, just stop." But the memories didn't stop. 30 years ago, the Silver Moon Court in its golden age. 2 children running through the Hall of Stars. Their laughter bright and careless. A boy no older than 10 with silver pale hair and eyes that hadn't yet learned how to be cold. And a girl beside him, dark-haired and wild, her dress trailing flower petals as she ran. "Sally, wait," the boy called, breathless. "You're too slow, Drave." And she laughed, spinning around to face him. "I told you I'd win." He caught up to her, grinning. "That's because you cheated." "Did not. You used the servant's passage. That's not cheating. That's strategy." Draven shook his head, but he was smiling. They stood together in a shaft of moonlight, painting them both in silver. "Promise me something," Celine said suddenly, her expression turning serious. What? Promise me we'll always be together, no matter what. Draven looked at her for a long moment, then held out his hand. I promise. She took his hand, and for a moment the Luna's bond, still dormant in both their bloodlines, flickered faintly across their palms. Celine screamed. The vision shattered like glass, and she was back in the guarded chamber, trembling, tears streaming down her face. It's not real, she whispered desperately. It can't be real. I don't know him. I don't... But the bond on her arm burned as if in answer. You do. Outside the door, Isla had been waiting. Elder Mara had tried to keep her in the sitting room, but the moment the attendant's back was turned, Isla slipped away. She reached the guarded chamber just as she heard it, her mother's scream. Isla didn't think. She darted forward, ducking between the guards, and threw open the door. Mom! Celine's head snapped up. Isla, no, you shouldn't be here. But Isla was already climbing, onto the bed, throwing her small arms around her mother's neck. You were screaming. I heard you. The moment Isla's skin touched hers, something shifted. The pain in Celine's arm dulled. The chaotic storm of memories quieted. The burning bond dimmed to a soft, steady glow. Celine gasped, clutching her daughter close. Isla, I'm here, Mom. I'm here. The guards appeared in the doorway, but Celine raised a hand. It's all right. Let her stay. They hesitated, then withdrew. Selena held Isla tight, burying her face in her daughter's hair. She could feel the faint pulse of the bond on Isla's palm, still incomplete, still flickering, but alive. Something's wrong inside me, Selene whispered. I keep seeing things that can't be real. Isla pulled back, her wide eyes searching her mother's face. What kind of things? Selena hesitated. I think I knew the king. A long time ago. Before you were born. Before I even remember being alive. Isla's small hand found her mother's glowing bond and rested over it gently. Maybe it's not wrong. Maybe it's just trying to come back. An hour later, there was a knock at the door. The guards opened it, and Draven stepped inside. He was alone. No crown, no armor. Just a man in a black cloak, looking more weary than Celine had ever seen him. Isla tensed, but Selene touched her shoulder. It's all right, sweetheart. Go sit by the fire for a moment. Isla obeyed reluctantly. Draven closed the door and stood just inside the threshold. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. I remember you, Selene finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. Draven's jaw tightened. How much? Pieces, fragments. She pressed a hand to her temple. A boy with your face, a hall of stars, laughter, and then fire, pain, someone ripping everything away. His hands clenched. Kyle. Your brother. My brother, the words were bitter. The one who orchestrated the Rogue Wars. The one who slaughtered the Silver Moon, line and tried to take the throne by force. He took a step closer. And the one who stole you from me. Celine's breath caught. What are you saying? Draven met her gaze, and there was something raw in his eyes. I think you were meant to stand beside me, Celine, not serve under me, not hide in the shadows as a maid. His voice cracked. I think you were meant to be Luna. The words hung in the air. Celine stared at him, her mind reeling. That's impossible. I can't. The bond on her arm flared. Silver light exploded across the room, brighter than before, more violent. Celine cried out, clutching her arm as the mark burned like fire. Mom! Isla scrambled to her feet. Draven moved without thinking, grabbing Celine's shoulders. Breathe! Look at me! But the bond wouldn't stop. It pulsed wildly, spreading tendrils of light across her skin. It's too much, Celine gasped. I can't. Draven pressed his own glowing wrist against hers. Bond to bond. The connection snapped into place, and for one blinding moment, they both saw it. the truth buried beneath 30 years of lies. Selene had been meant to rule, and someone had tried to erase her from history. The archivist arrived at dawn. He was ancient, his skin like parchment, his eyes milky white. He wore robes the color of old silver, stitched with thread that formed symbols older than the keep itself. His name was Aldrich, and he had served 4 generations of Silver Moon rulers. Draven met him in the vault of records, a circular chamber deep beneath the moon hall. Shelves spiraled upward into shadow, lined with books bound in leather and chain. Selene stood beside Draven, her arms still wrapped in bandages. Isla clung to her mother's side. Aldrich descended the spiral stair slowly, his staff tapping against stone. When he reached the bottom, he bowed first to Draven, then to Selene. "Your Majesty." Then his gaze shifted. "My lady." Selene tensed. "I'm not—" "You bear the bond," Aldrich interrupted gently. "That makes you more than what you believe yourself to be." Draven stepped forward. "Aldrich, the prophecy of the lost Luna. I need to see it." The archivist's eyes widened. "My lord, that text has been sealed for decades. After the Rogue Wars, you ordered—" "I know what I ordered, and now I'm ordering you to unseal it." Aldrich nodded slowly. He turned and moved toward a section of the vault shrouded in shadow. His fingers traced a pattern across the wall, and a hidden panel slid open. Inside was a single book. Small, bound in black leather, its cover etched with the Luna's bond surrounded by thorns. Aldrich lifted it carefully and carried it to a stone pedestal. He opened it with reverence. The pages were covered in script so old it seemed to shift in the candlelight. "The prophecy of the lost Luna," Aldrich said quietly, "written by the first oracle 2 centuries ago." He cleared his throat and began to read. "When shadow claims the throne of moon, and memory drowns beneath the rune, a child shall rise from hidden flame, born of silence, stripped of name. Neither Alpha born, nor Omega scorned, but both combined in blood, reborn. Dormant royal soul shall wake, and humble heart shall break the shadow's claim. The silver moon throne shall know her voice, the ancient stone shall make its choice. And when the bond burns bright and true, the lost shall rise, the line renew." Silence filled the vault. Isla stared at the book, her small hand glowing faintly. Selene's voice was barely a whisper. "A child born of dormant royal blood and Omega humility." Draven turned to face her. "Selene, when was Isla born?" 8 years ago, in the spring." "And before that, where were you? What do you remember?" Selene shook her head. "I told you. I don't remember. There's nothing before the keep." "Because someone made you forget." Draven's voice was low and dangerous. "Someone erased your memories, planted you in the keep as a servant, and waited." "Waited for what?" "For you to have a child." He looked at Isla. "A child who would carry both bloodlines. Yours, the last of the Silver Moon line, and the humility of an Omega upbringing." Selene's hand flew to her mouth. "No, that's not—" "Isla fits the prophecy perfectly." Draven's gaze was steady. "Dormant royal blood, Omega humility. She was born in secret, raised in obscurity, and now her bond is awakening." He turned to Aldrich. "Who else knew about this prophecy?" The archivist's expression darkened. "Your brother, my lord. Prince Kael studied it extensively before the Rogue Wars. He believed it was a threat to his claim." Draven's jaw tightened. "Because he knew. He knew Selene carried the bloodline. He knew if she ever had a child, that child would fulfill the prophecy and undermine his right to the throne. So he tried to erase her," Selene breathed, the pieces falling into place. "He stripped my memories, hid me among the servants, hoped I would fade into obscurity." "But you didn't." Draven's voice was soft now, edged with awe. "You survived, and you gave birth to the one thing Kael feared most." He knelt before Isla, meeting her wide eyes, You are the lost Luna, Isla, the child the prophecy spoke of, and your existence threatens everything Kale has built. The floor beneath them trembled. Isla gasped as the Luna's bond on her palm flared bright. The tremor spread upward through the keep. Far above, in the moon chamber, the ancient runes carved into the throne began to glow. One by one, they flickered to life, silver light spreading across the stone seat. The keep was waking. It recognized her. Aldrich, how long until the blood moon ascension? 2 nights, my lord. That's when he'll strike. Draven's voice was quiet, certain. Kyle will attack during the ascension, when the keep's defenses are focused inward. He'll come for Isla. Selene pulled her daughter close. Then we run. We take her somewhere he can't find her. There is nowhere. Draven's gaze was steady. The bond has awakened. The keep has claimed her. Running will only delay the inevitable. Then what do we do? Selene's voice cracked. Draven turned toward the stairs, his cloak billowing. We prepare for war. Within the hour, the keep was transformed. Guards doubled their patrols. Enchanted barriers were raised. The armory was opened, weapons distributed. Draven stood in the war room, surrounded by maps. His high council gathered around him. Kyle will bring everything he has, he said. Shadow Legion soldiers, rogue wolves, dark magic. He will not hold back. And neither will we, Counselor Orin said grimly. Draven's gaze swept the room. The child is the key. As long as Isla lives, the prophecy stands. As long as the prophecy stands, Kale's claim is worthless. He placed his hand on the map over the moon chamber. We make our stand here, in the heart of the Silver Moon dynasty. His eyes burned amber, and when Kale comes, we end this. The storm came at midnight. The clouds that gathered above Nightshade Keep were too dark, too thick. Lightning cracked across the sky in patterns that formed symbols. Draven stood on the ramparts, his cloak whipping in the wind. Behind him, his forces assembled. Soldiers in silver armor, mages with staffs crackling with wards, archers with blessed arrows. My lord, a scout sprinted up. Movement beyond Crimson Ridge. Thousands! From the darkness beyond the walls, they came. Shadow Legion soldiers, creatures of living darkness bound into armor. Rogue wolves, exiles and criminals, bloodthirsty and vicious. Dark mages, robed figures with hands crackling with shadow fire. At their head, mounted on a black wolf, rode Prince Kale. He raised one hand and the storm responded. Lightning struck the outer gates with devastating force. The iron doors exploded inward. Hold the line, Draven roared. His forces surged forward. Steel clashed against. Shadow. Magic tore through the air. Blood spilled across the courtyard. Deep inside the keep, in a chamber near the throne room, Selene held Isla close. The windows rattled. The walls trembled. Mom, what's happening? I don't know, sweetheart, but we're going to be okay. The door burst open. Elder Mara stood there, flanked by guards. All non-combatants are being evacuated to the lower vaults. We need to move now. Selene stood, pulling Isla with her. Where's Draven? Fighting at the outer wall. My lady, please, we don't have time. The keep shook violently. The window shattered and a wave of shadow poured through. The guards moved to intercept, but the darkness coiled around them, lifting them and slamming them into walls. They collapsed. Elder Mara screamed. Selene shoved Isla behind her, backing toward the door. Run! Get to the throne room! Find Draven! But the shadows were faster. They surged forward, forming a wall, and from the darkness, Kale stepped into view. He was taller than Selena remembered, more imposing. His armor was black as the void, etched with dark runes. His eyes burned with that terrible amber-black light. He looked at Selene first. Still alive, he murmured. I underestimated your resilience. Then his gaze dropped to Isla. But the child, he tilted his head. The child is a mistake that must be erased. Stay away from her. Celine's voice was steady despite the terror. Kyle smiled, cruel and mirthless. You don't even remember me, do you? Let me remind you. He raised his hand, and the shadows surged. Celine didn't think. She threw herself in front of Isla, arms spread wide. No! The Luna's bond on her arm exploded with light. Every memory Cale had tried to bury came flooding back in a torrent of fire and pain and rage. Celine screamed. Images tore through her mind. Running through the Hall of Stars as a child, Draven's hand in hers. Standing beside him at the Blood Moon Ascension, 16 years old, the bond burning bright as the pack bowed. Cale's face twisted with jealousy. The night of the Rogue Wars. Flames, soldiers dragging her away from Draven. Cale's cold voice. Erase her. Strip every memory. Years of servitude. Raising a daughter in secrecy. Never knowing she had once been meant to rule. The bond on Celine's arm blazed so bright it turned the shadows to smoke. She collapsed to her knees, gasping, tears streaming. But her eyes, when she opened them, were no longer the eyes of a frightened Omega. They were the eyes of a Luna. I remember, she whispered, her voice shaking with fury. I remember everything. Kyle's smile faltered. Selena rose slowly, the Luna's bond spreading across her arm in intricate patterns. Power radiated from her in waves, raw, ancient, furious. You stole my life, she said, her voice gaining strength. You stole my memories. You tried to erase me from history. She stepped forward. But I am Selena Nightshade, daughter of the First Lunaline, and you will not touch my daughter. No, Draven's voice echoed from the doorway. He stepped into the hall, blood streaking his armor, his eyes blazing. But we can. The moon chamber trembled. Far below, in the throne room, the ancient runes flared to life, brighter than they'd burned in decades. The keep recognized its Luna, and it was ready to fight. Cale moved like lightning, lunging for Isla. No! Selene screamed, and then the world stopped. Time seemed to stretch. Cale's charge slowed, his clawed hand reaching for the child, and Isla, small, terrified, glowing, raised her hand. The Luna's bond on her palm exploded with light. The keep responded. The carpet beneath Kyle's feet rippled, then twisted. Thorned vines erupted, wrapping around his legs. He snarled, tearing at them, but more surged upward. The candles lining the walls blazed. Their flames spiraled outward, forming barriers around Isla. And in the moon chamber far below, the Luna's bond carved into the throne, ignited. Silver light poured from the stone seat, flooding through the keep's veins, through the walls, the floors. The runes etched everywhere flared to life, pulsing in rhythm with Isla's heartbeat. The keep recognized her. The keep obeyed her. Kyle tore free with a roar of rage. You think a child can stop me? No, Draven said, stepping between Cale and Isla. His blade was drawn. But I can. Kyle's gaze snapped to his brother, and his lips curled into a vicious smile. Finally! And then they clashed. It was brutal. Centuries of rivalry unleashed in a storm of steel and fury. Draven's blade sang through the air, met by Cale's claws, blackened and dripping with shadow poison. They moved faster than mortal eyes could follow. Draven drove his sword toward Cale's heart. Kyle twisted, the blade grazing his armor, and lashed out. His claws raked across Draven's shoulder. Draven didn't flinch. He spun, driving his elbow into Cale's jaw, then followed with a brutal kick that sent his brother crashing into the wall. Cale pushed off, launching back. You've gotten slow, brother. And you've gotten reckless. Their weapons locked, faces inches apart. You think finding some Omega girl and her bastard child changes anything? Cale snarled. She's not an Omega, Draven growled, and that child is more of an heir than you ever were. Then I'll kill her, And you, and anyone else who stands in my way." He shoved Draven back and unleashed shadow magic. Dark tendrils lashed out like whips. Draven raised his hand. The Luna's bond on his wrist flared. The shadows recoiled, burning away. But Kyle was relentless. He pressed forward, driving Draven back. Across the hall, Selene clutched her head, her vision swimming with recovered memories. But one truth burned brighter than all others. She turned to Draven. "Draven!" He dodged a strike and glanced toward her. Selene's eyes were streaming, but her voice was steady. "She is yours." Draven froze. "What?" "Isla," Selene's voice broke. "She's not just mine. She's ours." The words hit him like a physical blow. "That night, before the Rogue Wars, Selena pressed a hand to her chest. "And then Cale took me. He erased my memories before I even knew I was pregnant. Before I could tell you." Draven stared at her, then at Isla, at the glowing bond on her palm, at the power radiating from her. His daughter. Something broke inside Draven. Not in despair. In fury. He turned back to Cale. "You didn't just try to take the throne. You tried to take my family." Cale's smile faltered. Draven moved faster, stronger. The Luna's bond on his wrist blazed with power. Not just his own, but connected to Selene's, to Isla's, to the truth that had been stolen from him. He drove Cale back with a flurry of strikes, each more devastating than the last. "You can't win this," Cale snarled. "I already have." Draven's blade slashed across Kyle's chest, tearing through armor and flesh. Cale screamed, staggering backward. Draven pressed forward, driving his brother across the hall, past the broken windows, toward the doorway that led to the moon chamber. Cale crashed to his knees at the foot of the throne. Draven stood over him, blade raised. "You wanted the throne. Here it is." Cale looked up, his face twisted with hatred. "This isn't over." "Yes," a small voice said. "It is." Isla stepped into the moon chamber. Her small frame seemed impossibly bright, the Luna's bond on her palm glowing like a star. She walked forward, her eyes fixed on Cale. "You hurt my mom. You hurt my—" She paused. "My father." The word hung in the air. Draven's chest tightened. Isla raised her tiny glowing hand, and the chamber ignited. Silver light exploded from the throne, flooding the hall in waves of pure, ancient power. The runes blazed in perfect synchronization. The windows shattered outward, raining colored light. The Luna's bond flared across Draven's wrist, across Selena's arm, across the very stones themselves. And at the center of it all stood Isla, small, fragile, and absolutely unstoppable. The keep recognized its heir, and it roared in triumph. The light was blinding. Cale raised his arm to shield his eyes, but it was useless. The silver radiance poured from every surface. It burned through shadow. His dark armor cracked and fell away. The runes etched into his skin flickered and died. The power he'd spent decades gathering burned away under Isla's light. "No," Cale gasped. "This isn't— I am the rightful—" "You are nothing," Draven said coldly. Outside in the courtyard, Cale's forces felt the shift. The Shadow Legion soldiers dissolved. The rogue wolves scattered, fleeing into the night. The dark mage's spells collapsed. The rebellion crumbled in minutes. Kyle fell to his knees, gasping. He looked up at Isla, at the small child with the blazing hand. For the first time in decades, he felt fear. "Mercy," he choked out. "Brother, please." "You stole 30 years from her," Draven said, gesturing to Selene. "You tried to murder my daughter. You slaughtered innocents to seize a throne that was never yours." His voice was ice. "There is no mercy for you here." Draven raised his hand. The guards moved forward, binding Kyle in chains etched with runes that burned cold and blue. Kyle screamed in rage and despair, but the sound was swallowed by the roar of the keep's awakening. Dawn came slowly. The storm clouds broke apart, revealing a sky painted in silver and gold. Survivors emerged from the lower vaults, staring in shock at the devastation and the light that still pulsed from the moon chamber. Draven stood on the steps of the throne room, flanked by his high council. Selene stood beside him, dressed in robes of deep silver edged in white, the traditional colors of the silver moon line. And in front of him, small and glowing, stood Isla. Draven's voice rang out across the courtyard. People of Nightshade, for 30 years we believed the silver moon line had been extinguished. We believed the royal bloodline ended with me. He paused. We were wrong. A ripple of shock and whispers. Draven gestured to Selene. This is Selene Nightshade, daughter of the first Luna line. She was stolen from us, her memories erased, her identity buried beneath lies. She is the Luna we thought lost. Gasps erupted, then Draven's gaze dropped to Isla. And this is Isla Nightshade, my daughter, the prophesied heir, the child born to resurrect the silver moon line. Silence. Then slowly, one by one, the people began to kneel. Draven looked down at Isla. Her wide eyes were filled with confusion and fear. He knelt. The Alpha King lowered himself to one knee before his daughter. I didn't know, he said softly, his voice breaking. I didn't know you existed. But now that I do... He reached out. Isla hesitantly placed her glowing hand in his. The Luna's bonds connected, pulsing in, perfect rhythm. You are my blood, Draven whispered. My heir. My future. Tears streamed down Isla's face. I'm scared. I know, but you're not alone. You never were. He glanced up at Selene, and she knelt beside him, wrapping her arms around them both. For the first time in 30 years, the Silver Moon family was whole. The moon chamber responded. The runes carved into the throne blazed brighter. The windows began to reform, fragments lifting and fitting themselves back together. The marble floor smoothed over. The silver carpets unfurled. The keep was healing. Isla stepped toward the throne. She reached out and placed her hand on the armrest. The entire throne ignited. Light poured from it, silver and gold, ancient and pure. It flooded through the chamber, through the keep, through the very stones. And every soul within those walls felt it. The silver moon line had returned. In the weeks that followed, the kingdom began to rebuild. Kael was tried and sentenced to eternal imprisonment in the vaults of silence. Selene's memories returned fully, and with them came the knowledge of who she had been. A Luna, meant to stand beside an Alpha King. She and Draven spoke late into the nights, piecing together the past, mourning what had been stolen, and carefully building something new. Isla trained with the keep's mages, learning to control the power that had awakened within her. One evening, as the sun set over Nightshade Keep, Draven stood on the balcony overlooking the kingdom. Selene joined him, slipping her hand into his. Do you think she'll be ready? Selene asked quietly. When the time comes? Draven watched as Isla played in the courtyard below, her laughter echoing. She'll have to be, but she won't face it alone. Selene leaned against